All right, today we're cracking open a document that's been wrapped in mystery for centuries. It's part poem, part legend, and part rule book for one of the world's most famous, shall we say, private clubs. We're talking about the Regius Poem, and believe me, it's a trip back in time that shows us way more than just a set of rules. So let's dive in.
I mean, seriously, what if? It sounds like the plot of a movie, doesn't it? But nope, this is the real deal. The very first set of rules we have for Freemasons wasn't some dry legal document. It was written in 794 lines of rhyming verse. And that one fact right there totally changes how you have to think about where this whole thing came from. So it goes by a couple of names. You can call it the Regius Poem or the Holywell manuscript, named after the guy who brought it to public attention back in 1840. But whatever you call it, its title is undisputed. This is it, the oldest Masonic document we know of. A direct line, a tangible link to the medieval world. Okay, so before we even get into what this thing says, we've got to look at what it is. We need to treat it like a historical artifact, a survivor from a completely different era.
I mean, just let that date sink in for a second. 1390. This was written before Columbus even thought about sailing the ocean blue, way before the printing press changed the world in Europe. It's written in this early version of English that some experts think might even be older than Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. That it survived at all is just incredible. And when you put it side by side with later Masonic documents, you really start to see just how unique the Regius Poem is. For one, it's a poem. The later stuff is all prose. It's also got this very strong Roman Catholic vibe, while the later texts, they're clearly from after the Protestant Reformation hit England. It's not just a slightly different version of what came later, it feels like it's from another planet entirely. All right, now for the fun part, the story. The poem doesn't just launch into a list of do's and don'ts. No, it kicks off with this epic origin story, what historians call the legend of the craft. It was all about giving these Masons this grand backstory, making them feel like they were part of something ancient and noble.
So get this. The poem claims the whole art of Masonry, which it actually calls geometry, goes all the way back to Euclid, the famous Greek mathematician, but in ancient Egypt. From there, the legend says the craft made its way to England during the time of King Athelstan, back in the 10th century. And apparently, the king loved Masonry so much that he called this massive meeting of all the Masons in the land at York, just to get them organized and set up some ground rules.
And you can actually hear the voice of this medieval storyteller in lines like this one. It basically translates to, "This craft came into England, just like I'm telling you, in the time of good King Athelstan's day." You can almost picture someone centuries ago setting the scene for the laws that are about to be revealed.
So, that legendary meeting in York? That's the setup for the real heart of this thing, a super strict code of conduct. And it's all broken down neatly into 15 articles for the masters and 15 points for the regular craftsmen. So, the story goes that this big meeting is where all these rules got hammered out. And this wasn't just some friendly advice either. It was framed as the law of the craft, coming straight from the authority of the king himself. That gave it some serious weight.
And the rules for the masters? Wow, they tell you so much. Of course, you've got stuff about personal integrity and business ethics, like paying your guys a fair wage. But then you see rules that show you the rigid social ladder of the 14th century. Forbidding the hiring of bondmen, or serfs, meant the craft was for free men only, a huge deal back then. And the rule against hiring a haltman and a lame? That tells you just how brutally physical stonemasonry was in a time before any power tools. And the craftsmen? They had a whole set of rules too, and they were just as serious. It was all about a hierarchy of loyalty. First God, then the church, then your master. And secrecy was everything. You had to keep the secrets of the lodge, no exceptions. And then you get these really strong moral codes, including one that says explicitly not to sleep with your master's wife or a fellow mason's wife. Breaking that rule could get you banned from the craft for 7 years.
Okay, but just when you think you've got this thing pinned down, as a purely professional rule book, it takes this totally unexpected and fascinating turn. This wasn't just a guide on how to be a good Mason, it was a guide on how to be a good person in the 14th century.
Yeah, suddenly the poem just zooms out from the workshop in the lodge. It starts dishing out advice on how to act in every part of medieval life. And this is where we get a really incredible peek into their world. I mean, check this out. The poem literally has a section on how to behave in church. Take holy water, kneel at the right times, say your prayers without making a big scene. My absolute favorite is the last one. If you won't pray, don't hinder others. Talk about a piece of advice that stood the test of time.
And it's not just church. It even dives into table manners. And this is where it gets kind of wild because it sounds so surprisingly modern. Make sure your hands are clean, don't talk with your mouth full, don't slurp your drink. These are the kinds of things our parents told us, and here they are written down over 600 years ago for a bunch of stonemasons. It's just amazing.
So you might be asking, why does this weird, beautiful, super old poem even matter today? What's the big takeaway? What's its legacy?
Well, when you boil it all down, the Regius Poem is really two incredible things at once. On one hand, yeah, it's a blueprint for how to run a professional guild based on skill, on ethics, on supporting each other. But on the other hand, it's a perfect little time capsule that shows us just how tangled up work, faith, and simple daily life were in the medieval world.
And you know, the historians who pore over this document, they don't see it as just some old oddity. As this quote gets at, they see it as a potential key, a way to unlock the true origins and the real character of Freemasonry itself, showing its roots in the very practical and spiritual world of the medieval builder. And that really leaves us with one big question to chew on, right? From the ethics we expect in our jobs to the simple manners we use at the dinner table, the Regius Poem is this incredible reminder that the rules we live by have roots that go incredibly deep. It really makes you wonder how much of our own world is still being shaped by codes, both written and unwritten, that were first laid down centuries and centuries ago.